finale of the PIO podcast. I'm your host, Robert Tornabene. Today, we're wrapping up this incredible year of growth, learning, and connection. Let's take a moment to reflect on the highlights and celebrate the most listened to episodes and a look ahead of what's coming in 2025. This year, we delivered 47 episodes, 11 more than we did in 2023. We tackled topics ranging from artificial intelligence to self-care. We heard from an amazing lineup of communicators, professionals across police, fire, EMS, local government, federal agencies, and public relations firms. One of the most exciting moments was traveling virtually across the Pacific to speak with Lisa Glass, all the way in New Zealand. Each conversation brought unique perspectives to the crucial role that we play as public information officers, and today we're spotlighting the 10 most listened to episodes in 2024. So here we go. At number 10, Irene Mahoney, Public Information Officer, Mesa, Arizona PD. Irene shared her vision from transforming the PIO office from a reactive to a proactive office.
When I came in, it was your standard kind of PIO office. We had 2 sworn officers that worked in the department and just basically answered media calls, right? When things happened, they would answer it and provide information and go out on scenes and all the typical things that a PIO office would do. You know, my vision when I came in was to operate like a newsroom and be able to tell our own stories and tell, I didn't want us to always be the headlines because something went wrong or there was, it's a bad story. I wanted to be able to showcase the day-to-day, what the officers are doing and, the impact that they have on our community and really kind of turn it from a reactive office to a proactive. And so, it's been 5 years since I've been here and it's been amazing. We've grown a ton. We have in our department, we have 2 sworn officers, myself, we have a videographer, and we just added a part-time social media intern to help us. And so, kind of our focus has been to tell our stories, tell all of the stories that kind of impact our community and what our officers are doing. And obviously, we still have the media component where we, when things happen, we answer to the media. We have press conferences, we go out on scene, we do all of that. So it's just kind of been an added plus for us to be able to go out and tell our own story. And a lot of times, we'll put stories out and then the media will call and say, hey, we want to tell that story.
At number 9, Brent Weisburg, Director of Communications for the Salt Lake City Police Department. Brent discovered evolving data communications and transitioning to a more real-time crime dashboard.
So right now we're in the process of rolling out a new crime dashboard. As you know, law enforcement, we have so much data on our hands that really tell the story of the great work of our police officers, our professional staff. And so one of the things that we have done is we have, many of the people who will listen to this podcast in law enforcement are probably aware of the old CompStat model based out of NYPD. And so we have been using the CompStat model for several years. And now we are starting to transition away from that to, as we employ our crime reduction strategy, our violent crime reduction strategy, our stratified policing. And so as we evolve in our ability to reduce crime, overall crime, violent crime in the city, we also wanted to better communicate that work and to show the great work that's happening. So we're starting to evolve away from that CompStat model to show this new crime dashboard. And so we've been rolling out that very strategically. Last week, we met with local community members to give them a preview before we suddenly rolled it out in a press conference because we wanted to make sure that we were doing it in a way that wasn't going to catch community members off guard because they're so used to our crime reports coming out weekly that any change they could see as potentially alarming. And we didn't want this to be an abrupt change. So We were very focused on wanting to make sure that the community had engagement. It was a great listening session. They were offering suggestions, things that, even though we thought of everything, it's always that one person in that room who was like, hey, did you guys think about this? Why don't you do this? And we're all like, that's the light bulb. Why didn't we think about that? So it's really important for us to engage with our community. And we were very pleasantly surprised with the support that we had from the community members. And it included business leaders. It included people who are in the neighborhood coalition throughout Salt Lake City, the neighborhood president, if you will. And because they all rely on that data. And so one of the things that we're continuing to do is to evolve the use of dashboards to show what different squads are doing. We have our Salt Lake City Police Department's Police Community Response Team, which are non-sworn professional staff who can respond to low-level, non-hazardous calls for service. So a lockout or something, a lost property, damaged property, and take those reports so our police officers can be available for higher priority calls for service. Well, since they started, they've done more than 3,000 calls, and our community members won't know that unless we share that data. So really rolling out this dashboard is going to be one of our big highlights for this year.
At number 8, Cruz, Public Information Officer for the Pittsburgh Police Department. Cara highlighted the importance of empowering first responders as their spokespeople.
So previously, when I first started, the previous mayoral administration did not like that. They wanted everything to be centralized through the PIO, which fine. It was a technique, but I'm a really, really strong advocate for training up our first responders to be able to be comfortable speaking with the media, because what they say goes so much further than when it comes from me. Because if there's a person in a uniform who was at the scene and knows what they can and can't say, you and I know that we had to go through a lot of self-editing, and where the story could go. So you're doing a lot of, like I said, editing. Whereas they're in a better position. They spend time in court, so they kind of see that trajectory and know that, what they can and can't say. But we're still extremely valuable in terms of directing them and letting them know what's out there in the zeitgeist, and I always call them pointing out the landmines. So, my job is to point out the landmines so that you don't step on them. And after that, you're good to go. So I love that I'm creating this stable of all these people who are now very willing to speak to the media. So yes, they do have that ability. This chief, our new chief, is absolutely huge on that. He wants to empower all of them to speak with the media, but there's a little bit of retraining their brains to do it because they were never allowed to before.
At number 7, Kristi Jourdan, Director of Communications and Media from the Contra, Costa County, California government. She shared her tips on being an outstanding PIO.
I think join industry groups. So here in California, we have CAPIO, the California Association of Public Information Officers. That's a very valuable resource. There are also national groups as well. Get to know reporters in your community, the ones who are covering, whatever beat or agency that you're responsible for communicating about. Make sure you learn what's of interest to them. Press releases are fine. They serve a purpose. But as a former reporter, I know the stories that I was pursuing were the ones that I had relationships with sources and they were pitching me or I was pitching them. So it can be part of your strategy, but knowing the reporters. I think studying something like communications, journalism, public relations, you'll get a different type of experience with each one of those. And then follow news outlets. Don't just rely on social media, although that can be a good resource for you. You're going to have to comb through what's accurate and, some of the misinformation, but really kind of following what those news outlets are covering to see tone, to figure out who's covering your area of focus, and then to also make sure you see how they're covering the community is also really key. So I think those are some of the aspects, if you want to become a PIO, that you should consider.
At number 6, Chief Christopher Cook of Whitesettlement Police Department in Whitesettlement, Texas. He introduced us to his ACE method and his new book.
Yeah, number one, it's a great resource guide. Sometimes when we're in the thick of things, when things are really bad, let's say we have an internal issue, it's nice to have a reference just to kind of go and try to thumb through that and find just some advice. Another thing, and I think this has been out of all the feedback I've received, and this book has already been sent to 2,700 police chiefs in Texas. They love the first couple of chapters where, I think it's chapter 1, we talk about the ACE principle. They're like, hey, I don't even need to read the book any further. What the ACE principle is A stands for assess the situation. So let's say you got a media inquiry that comes your way. You assess it, right? The C stands for choose a path or plan. And then the E is you execute. You got to do what you say you're going to do. And then we always have time to evaluate typically. So if we need to retweak it. So I think there's a lot to get out of the book. Hopefully, again, this is not about egos or anything like that. You certainly don't make any money off really selling books. It's really about bettering our profession. And again, a lot of great work out there. And so I appreciate the feedback and support.
Captain John Vick comes in at number 5. He's a podcast extraordinaire from the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, and he offered us his insights into the world of podcasting and how they deliver their 902 podcast.
I did a little bit of research, in my class, but then did some other research when the research is different when you actually have to spend the money on it, right? So when we started looking, I was really looking for just kind of a kit, something that could get me up and off the ground because it was new to me. And so the best one that I found, and I think it was like through B&H Audio, but they had one with some Rode. It was kind of a mix of Rode equipment and then also Zoom podcast stuff. So we started out with a Rode Podcaster 2 for our mixer. Still use that today. That's what I'm talking to you on right now. And I'll use that for the majority of our episodes. And then I've got Zoom mics, headsets, mic stands, stuff like that. We started out with basically a pack that we could do 4 people total. So 4 microphones. Usually that works pretty good because I'll have myself, our sheriff, chief deputy, and then we'll have an external guest. Sometimes one of them can't make it. Maybe we'll have 2 guests. We had some bigger episodes that we had to get some different equipments. Zoom makes a PodTrack P8 where you can get up to 6 mic tracks without you can kind of daisy chain all these things together and go really crazy. But if you have more than 6 people in a room, all of a sudden it kind of starts to get hard for the listener to figure out who the heck's talking. So that's about the max that we'll do. So I'd say we maybe use that on 10-15% of our episodes, but usually it's 4 people or less in a room, and we're using the Rodecaster Pro 2.
In episode number 4, I spoke to former WBBM radio reporter Julie Mann. She is now the public information officer for Kane County government, and she addressed critical gatekeeping concerns.
I'm not a gatekeeper. I mean, people, the media, the local media has already had an established relationship with the elected officials in Kane County, and they have the right phone numbers, and they have the ways of finding government people that they want to talk to. But I do, from my standpoint, know that over the years of being in media, that public officials are good at hiding themselves, and they are good at putting a person up who doesn't answer the phone, who won't respond to emails, who gives you a very vague statement back without the ability to ask questions, which then forces you as a reporter to go to the scene, which you should be doing anyways, to ask the person directly if they'll even allow you to get close enough to them to ask a question. I think as media has shrunk, government has been able to take advantage of the fact that, in some circumstances, not all, has been able to take advantage of the fact that we are condensing. We don't have enough reporters out on the street. They're not getting paid enough. They're burning out. And that closes a window on what reporting and good journalism was all about, which is keeping transparency between public offices and the people they serve. And I think that that's a very big concern that I have always had, that if you're a public information officer and that's the job you're paid to do, then it's your obligation to respond to the media, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, you need to provide something, and the truth is always there, right? I mean, if you don't have the answer, tell them you don't have the answer. If you have to direct them someplace else, tell them to give you some time. Tell them you can't provide that information. You'll have to, FOIA the information. It's just a two-way street that I find some days the doors are very much closed off. And that there were people that I knew that I know that if I emailed them or called them, they wouldn't call me back. And they were public information officers and communications managers, and that was primarily their job. So gatekeeping, yeah, I think it happens.
At number 3, Senior Public Information Officer for the Dallas Police Department, Jesse Carr. He emphasized aligning communication strategy with your vision and branding.
Yeah, so big on strategies. I think strategies are important, especially in our role. And it is a challenge because you look at strategy and there may be similarities, but it's also going to depend on your city size, your agency size, and things like that. One of the things that we've been looking at here and that I've been trying to focus on as I came on board is how does our strategy mesh with our vision and our brand image and then our branding as a department? Because, I would also say while strategy is important, it's equally important to have a clear brand, a clear branding guide, and then a vision that goes hand in hand because, prior to, I came from a place where I built the PIO position and then I was a one-person shop. So if anything was being communicated, I was the one communicating that. So I could set that tone and it would be the same type of conversation no matter what. Obviously, in this environment, when I have a team and there could be, somebody posting on social media could be one of the 6 of us, it's very important that we make sure that even down to the wording that we're using, the language that we're using is very clear to all of us. And we're keeping in mind that brand image and our goal and then that vision. And so I've been really focusing on trying to tie that into our strategy down to, hey, how are we posting things? What are we posting? And then obviously a big component, and I know we'll talk about this in engagement, but a big component of that strategy is knowing your science. And in this context, when I say science, I mean looking at the data and the analytics and the numbers and making sure, because that will impact your goal as well. I mean, I talk about this a lot in that I believe it's more important to reach your community versus going viral.
At number 2, Kayla Gneck Smith, PIO for the Tempe, Arizona Police Department. Kayla stressed the value of crisis communication templates. They are so important.
So one improvement that we're really working towards that I've focused on since I came in is trying to get templates established or CAPS templates established, because that's one thing that we've never had for crisis communication, especially because a few years we had that train derailment within the city of Tempe, and that was a huge eye-opener as far as crisis communication templates. So just basic templates that are already pre-approved that we can kind of get out quickly, just because, as I mentioned, the golden hour is very imperative. One thing that I'm already working on is with the department or the Maricopa Department of Emergency Management is crisis communication for radiological and nuclear messaging. It's kind of taking out the fear of radiological and nuclear messaging for the community. I'm working on that with partner cities and agencies just to kind of get a standard operations system developed for all cities and agencies so that they can have a standardized practice across the board, just because we've noticed that agencies don't have something in play right now, and everyone's kind of tiptoeing when it comes to those types of messaging.
And at number 1, our most listened to episode of 2024, Alexa Boylon, Director of Communications for the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. She shared her passion for storytelling and humanizing law enforcement officers.
Storytelling, at least for me, you talk about your passion project, that's mine. When I came into this role, I made it very clear that that's what I wanted to be doing. I did not want to be churning out press releases any day. I don't think that's meaningful or challenging. I think it's important for our community to meet and understand the officers that are protecting and serving them. And that's everything that we've tried to do. So a lot of the time we do this through video. We do this through videos that we post on social media. There are videos that we've actually released to the media, but we have a few different series. One of them is called the Before the Badge, which is very similar to something that you would actually see on your local news. I do an on-camera portion of it, and then we speak to and interview officers to find out how they got into law enforcement. What did that journey look like for him or her? And we've had some wild stories. I mean, it's really, really interesting. One of my favorites is one of our officers was a Disney princess before she joined law enforcement. We've had people that have worked in education, have been teachers. We've had mechanics, military. I mean, you name it, we probably have it. But we think it's really important for the community to see past just a uniform and to understand that our officers have lives, our officers have emotions, and it's just another way of getting our community to not only, but to really understand where these officers are coming from and some of the challenges they see every day.
This is the time when I want to ask you for your feedback. We want to hear from you. Send us your comments, your suggestions, your favorite moments to this email address, thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Again, thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Whether it's a guest you'd like to see in season 5 or your thoughts on a specific episode, we want your input. Your engagement keeps this podcast thriving. As we close this out, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their expertise, to my partner and wife, Christine, for her unwavering support, and to you, our listeners, for your feedback, encouragement, and loyalty. As we look ahead, I'm thrilled to announce that in Season 5, we kick off on January 1 of 2025. We've already recorded with experts from around the globe, including some social media trailblazers. We have an exciting new sponsorship that opens up opportunities coming your way for your agencies. So make sure you follow us on TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube, and also Instagram so you don't miss a thing or you learn about a new opportunity. If you haven't subscribed, now is the perfect time to join the community. As I close this chapter, I want to thank you for being part of the PIO podcast. Your support and passion inspires each episode. Stay connected during the break by revisiting past episodes and encouraging us on social media. And get ready for an incredible Season 5. It's just around the corner, just a month away. Until then, take care, stay curious, and keep the conversation going. You are the heart and soul of the PIO podcast.